What's up guys, my name is Carl and welcome back to Tech Hunter. I hope you're all keeping safe during the lockdown and making the most of your time at home with maybe friends and family and kind of focusing on maybe something to keep yourselves busy if you can't work from home. So let's jump back to the main reason you're all here today. Today I've got another case from Gamemax. Would you believe it? They're still happy to send me cases regardless of how long it actually takes me to fulfill on my end of the bargain and actually reviewing these things and sticking to a schedule for them. But today we have the Gamemax Venus. It's a pretty fresh looking case coming in at £60 in the UK and $60 in the US. Amazon affiliate links will be in the description down below if you want to go and check them out. Also, they give me a small kickback to help support the channel if you want it. The Venus comes packing a huge addressable RGB V-shaped LED on the front of the case that instantly grabs your attention. Pairing that with an included ARGB fan in the back to kind of complement the whole look. As well as that, we get an ARGB hub and fan controller built into the case, also on the rear side of the back panel. The case adds a lot more for kind of future-proofing for your ARGB needs, much like I've taken advantage of, and I've added 3 extra ARGB fans into this build. Also, Gamemax includes a little RGB controller, about this kind of big, not this one, for a little added convenience too. That's somewhere. I've probably lost that. As well as the striking front panel, the Venus includes a tempered glass panel on one side. Unfortunately though, it is attached with 4 thumb screws, which I am starting to get a little bit tired of. It's a really tedious way to mount the glass, and I wish Gamemax would kind of move towards different methods. I wish every company would move towards different methods, to be honest. Magnets, hooks, anything, thumb screws at the rear, anything. Regardless of my problems with tempered glass. Moving around to the other side panel, there is also held on with 4 thumb screws. You know, the one on the back side, which usually has the screws at the back. So that's quite uncommon. But if I'm honest, that method actually works out to be pretty handy once you've loaded the rear of the case with RGB cables, maybe even extensions, or if you've got kind of thick chunky cables anyway. The advantage of using the thumb screws means that you don't have to lock the case in at the top and the bottom, then kind of slide it towards the front. Basically, you can just push it on there and just kind of hook it in place. Get your thumb screws. That's a little bit awkward getting the first one started. But then once you're on there, it allows you to just kind of squish it all down using the 4 thumb screws at good points of contact. And with the old kind of slide to the front method, you can trap some cables, so it's quite nice here. Looking at the top of the case, we have 3 USB ports, as well as your HD audio jacks, as well as the power and reset or LED switch button, depending on how you want to utilize that. The cable inside the case can be either split off to go inside the ARGB hub or into your motherboard. We also have a huge cutout and magnetic dust filter at the top of the case, allowing for plenty of natural exhaust, and it supports up to 3 120mm fans or a 360mm radiator. Also, at the front of the case, we do have support for another 360mm rad also, but I'd severely recommend against it for obvious reasons. Airflow is extremely limited, and the only intake being offered at the front of the case is right at the bottom, that small little cutout where you can just see the bottom of that 120mm fan just spinning around. That's how much fan is actually there at the bottom. Gamemax have suggested mounting fans on the inside of the case, to say to the right hand side of the motherboard, to make use of the ventilation holes in the rear side panel. But if you were to mount your fans there, I genuinely have no idea where they expect you to route your 24-pin cable, as well as your kind of VGA cables for your PCIe cards, or even some SATA cables, or the USB header cables. Genuinely have no idea. If you look at this picture in the manual I'll put up on screen, you guys tell me where the cables are meant to go. Maybe through the fans so they don't actually spin. So as you can see, I opted against that idea. Cable management overall is okay. There's plenty of cutouts and grommets and tie down points to easily run cables, and I do quite like the use of grommets. A lot of cases are going away from that, but I still, as fiddly as they can be, I still quite like them. You get the top and the bottom of the motherboard area, but no kind of neat clean channels like you'd see in a NZXT or a Fantex case for this kind of price point. But there is about 25mm of clearance at the rear of the case to kind of help with those thicker cables. Funnily enough, there is one grommet which gets completely covered by a regular ATX board. I don't really know why they even offer support for eATX boards in this case, but I imagine it's for people using micro ATX boards in a larger case, just to try and save some money themselves. Or quite often you'll see with system builders, they will use the cheaper micro ATX boards to try and keep their costs down, regardless of whether it's a micro ATX case or not. We have support for two 3.5-inch drives at the bottom of the case with some nice little drive caddies, and support for plenty of 2.5-inch SSDs too, depending on wherever you want to mount them. And again, on the Gamemax website, they suggest mounting them right where the main cable route is, similar to where I mentioned where you could put some fans earlier. Again, I'm not sure why. The case is quite a bit taller than I was expecting, so that offers some kind of extra room at the top for that radiator mounting and fan mounting, and also makes it a little bit easier when it comes to cable routing at the top for maybe your fan cables that you want to plug into the top, your RGB cables, or even especially the 8pin EPS cable. As far as dimensions are concerned, the case measures in at 199mm wide, 495mm tall, and about 400mm deep. This allows to fit PSUs up to 160mm, GPUs up to a maximum length of 390mm, and CPU coolers up to 160mm in height, which means my cheap Chinese £17 cooler from Amazon just fits. Like, we're talking maybe a millimeter of clearance there. I've mounted 3 fans at the front of the case purely for comparative reasons. How well does it perform without the front panel, and how well does it perform with the front panel? You could quite easily just mount all your fans at the top of the case and just go for pure exhaust, but that will seriously kind of limit the amount of cool air your GPU will receive. You can mount fans on the basement of the PSU, just on top of the PSU, but I don't know where the fresh air is going to come from. So I'm going to tell you right now, it was a very big difference between the front panel being off and it being on, as I imagine none of you would have expected. So with our delidded 8700K with liquid metal applied and overclocked to just a modest 4.8 GHz, again I've got a $17 cooler on there. I ran Cinebench R20 on loop for about 10 minutes with all fans set to 100%, and the highest temperature we hit was 83 degrees. Pretty toasty, but again, not too bad. Probably down to the fact that we've got a cheap cooler. We could have got lower temperatures, but the fact we are delidded has really saved the day there, I'd imagine. But when I removed that front panel and we reran the test, we hit just 73 degrees, dropping 10 degrees, a 12% decrease in maximum CPU temperatures. Not looking good so far. The GPU though, how did that fare? I'm sure that probably did quite well. So again, with the RTX 2070 installed and the power limit maximized in MSI Afterburner and the GPU fan set to 50%, you don't really gain much by going any higher than that really, maybe 1 degree. Then I opened up MSI Combustor and started a 10-minute stress test on the GPU. Front panel on, we hit 82 degrees. This is not a Founders Edition card in here, so we shouldn't be hitting those temperatures ever. Our GPU clock also leveled out around 1725 MHz. Removing the front panel, we dropped to around 72 degrees, and our GPU clock leveled out around 1755 MHz. So not only do we drop 10 degrees here as well, we're also gaining a kind of 30 MHz overclock, or just a bumping clock speed, just by removing the front panel. As well as GPU Boost 4.0, we'll try to boost the clock speeds higher if the thermals on the card allow it. Quite clearly, that is exactly what we've seen here. Overall though, the Venus is an okay case for the price. It only includes one ARGB fan, a big V-shaped LED on the front, and other than that, it's nothing revolutionary, nor is it anything really to get excited about. Gamemax themselves have made better cases at this price. Competitors like Fantex have their P350X or the P360X, depending on which you can find, with better build quality, better cable management, and better airflow. So it does kind of make this case hard to recommend, unfortunately. If they had a good way to keep those thermals lower, then maybe it'd be easier to suggest buying, or if you're running low-end hardware that doesn't need much active cooling, then it'll just be fine for you. Anyway guys, that brings us to the end of the video. If you did like the video, feel free to click that like button down below, and if you decide my kind of pale face hasn't offended you, don't forget to click that subscribe button and also click the bell icon down below too, so you can check out when my next video goes live too. Thanks for watching guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.